Welcome to the Code for Couples podcast, focusing on topics for law enforcement officers and couples to keep you and your relationship connected, resilient, and code for. Now, your host, law enforcement expert Cyndi Doyle, author of Hold the Line and My Wife.
Back to the Code for Couples podcast. Today, I have Scott Medlin on, and I came across Scott when I heard a post that he made on LinkedIn. And by heard, I mean he posted a video. And I'd been following him for a while, but there was something about the post and video that he shared and made that resonated with me in such a way that I immediately DM'd him and said, I need you on my podcast. He talks about the impact of his journey as an officer. So let me just tell you a little bit about Scott. Scott is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran who worked on a career in law enforcement for nearly 15 years, including city patrol, K-9, SRO, and then campus police officer in a small university. And because there wasn't enough going on in 2020, he decided to start speaking to officers because he wanted officers to be impacted in their personal well-being in order to survive the career better. Thank you, Scott, for so much for coming on. I know that you have been impacted personally. Your relationship was also impacted. And I love the fact that you are willing to talk about your journey with other people and to help others as a part of sharing that. And it's like your resilience is a part of that. So thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. My honor. When you reached out, I was thrilled and I couldn't say no. I'm glad to be here in the Code for Couples podcast. And to all the listeners, I apologize about my voice. I had a little procedure done about a week ago and the doctor said you can expect a sore throat. So sorry for the voice. But
oh my
anyway,
gosh.
Yeah, no, I'm very curious though. So I'll ask you the first question if you don't mind. What LinkedIn post was it? I try to post as much as I can. So I don't know which video you were talking about.
I can't even say. I think you were talking about how we had to become human and how we have to understand that as officers, you're not bulletproof. And that's probably something around that resonated with me, mostly because in our journey with my husband currently, he had some medical issues and it really hit him in such a way that he had to confront that in a large way. And I think that's what really resonated with me was that being human and that humanness and how you talk about that it's okay to fall down.
Yeah. All part of the.
Yeah, for sure. I know that I had heard you speak, and I know when people have a passion, because you have passion when you speak, I know when people have passion, it comes from somewhere. And that usually means they have a story. And I know you have a little bit of story, but I don't know your whole story. What's the story that you have that causes the passion that you have to talk to officers and impact their relationships and their journeys?
Trying to make a long story short, over the span of several years, I was like any other police officer when I got sworn in. You had to tie me down. I was about to float away with excitement. I was thrilled to finally be a police officer because I had done ride-alongs, interned at the department. I was ready, beyond ready. And fast forward, I was doing patrol, K-9, really liking it overall. Of course, the job had its ups and downs, but overall, very much liking it. About 9 years into the career, my wife said, I'm having thoughts of living without you. And I was coming into the prime of my K-9 career. My dog and I were doing pretty well, and I was living it, loving it. But I wasn't present at home for my wife and our baby son at the time, our firstborn. And that's when it hit me. I said, oh my gosh, I have become the cop that I swore I'd never be. I've become the person I never wanted to become. And I didn't blame her. No, this is on me, because looking back at it, the signs were there. I didn't take them seriously. I was too busy identifying as a police officer. And I had also battled an addiction earlier in my career and still had to manage symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder from the Iraq deployments and what I'd seen in policing. But when she said that, it all changed everything.
When you look back, what were some of the signs that you noticed?
She would say things like, you don't need to go work that off-duty job. We have enough money. Why are you going to go work that off-duty job? I was like, it's easy money. Why not? And she was like, yeah, but it's Friday night. And I was like, I don't care. It's easy money. Why not have the money? And she was right. We didn't need the money. And you can't buy back time with anybody. I was having a lot of fun being a cop.
It was so much fun. And then recognizing that it impacted your values, maybe you realized, oh, that I want to go make easy money. And it was fun.
Mhm.
And choosing that makes sense. And I know that canine, at least what I know about canine, is that there's the potential to be on call all the time. You could go out at any time. I know your dog takes a lot of effort. Dogs take a lot of effort. They take a lot of training.
Yep.
There's a mindset that comes with that too. And being incorporated in that, I'm sure that had an impact as well on the relationship.
Oh, 100%. I didn't get called in as much as I thought I would. However, we would be wrapping up training, our weekly training, and all of a sudden a call would come out that's a larceny suspect had run into the woods. Hey, canines all training, have them come out, that kind of thing. Things got
Mhm.
extended. There was one shift in particular. One time we were finishing up training and someone ran out the back of a mall and stole some cell phones, ran into the woods. And long story short, that person ended up getting a ride before my dog and I could get to him. But I called my wife when I'm waiting to be picked up about a mile down the road. And I said, I'm going to be home late. And she was livid, absolutely livid.
Yeah.
Officers have told me, I'm not going to say what they told me, but they said,
We swear on the podcast. It's okay.
they would tell me she knew what to expect. But at
Yeah.
the same time, if I'm not showing up at home and I'm not being present to her when I am home, that was catastrophic. It was a domino effect. It
Yeah.
wasn't the one thing I did expect it, but when your husband's at home and he's grouchy and he's hyper vigilant because of all the intense action he's seen at the job working as a canine officer from the incidents from time to time, it takes its toll.
Absolutely.
In February of 2016, that's when she told me, I'm having thoughts of leaving you. And I said, we can make this work. So I took off weekends. I took off so much I was burning through my vacation time. But the
Mhm.
thing is, I was so messed up mentally that the signs and symptoms of PTSD and all that had just gotten me so much. It didn't matter how much time I took off. I needed to work on me. And that wasn't happening on patrol.
How did you decide to work on you?
I had to give up canine before I lost my wife. I made the tough decision to resign.
That is a tough choice.
That was a tremendously tough choice, but
Yeah.
what sealed the deal was not only her. We slept in different beds one night. That broke my heart.
Mm.
That's not supposed to be how a marriage goes at all. We did that. Needless to say, I didn't sleep well that night and then went in and worked a 12-hour shift. But a pastor friend of mine said, Scott, the job is earthly. Your wife is godly. You need to really put your attention towards her. I realized it was me because I was noticing all the signs and symptoms that something was going on with me. After resigning from canine, it's not like everything was fixed by any means. For about 6 months, I resented her. I hated the fact I had to give up canine. I was crushed inside that I had to say goodbye to the dog. And then now the department did help me out. They put me as a school resource officer, which was much more family friendly. However, I noticed I wasn't getting better. I reached out to a man who treated me for PTSD from the Iraq deployments. And he said, you're going through a lot right now. That was literally almost trauma to give up your dog. And
Yeah.
let's start working on you. And we did. And at that point, that's when the moment came where I started working on me, and I haven't stopped because you can't stop. We always have to work on us. It's part of being human.
Oh, it's funny that you said there's two things. First of all, I want to point out the fact that you had said you blamed her, like the resentment, or maybe you didn't say blame. Maybe you said resentment, but I think that's pretty common it's you're making me do this. It was like an ultimatum. And really it's a boundary setting. What I heard is she came to you and she said, hey, I'm thinking about this and this is what's going on. And then the resentment that came with it is natural, but the difference is, am I taking ownership or am I blaming somebody else? And that's hard to move through because you loved it so much. And I get that.
Yeah.
And then just moving through, figuring out what you had to work through in order to get to the other side of your humanness. I love that you used that word.
It's
Mm,
something we
it's
can't escape. As much as cops love to say, I'm fine, nobody's fine all the time. Stop it with this phrase, or I'm good, I'll be okay. We got to stop talking like that.
yeah.
What is wrong? What's bothering you? Fix it. Stop it with the excuses.
I was thinking about Wednesday, I had an officer in my therapy room and he was getting irritated at me. And he's, Cyndi, I had this all neatly packed up. And I'm like, no, you really didn't. You just thought you had it all packed up. I'm sorry. How do you define humanness? What does that mean to you?
In my opinion, it's when I hear human, you're going to make mistakes. You're
Mhm.
going to have your ups and downs. However, we can grow as humans. And if we stop growing, I've heard the analogy, it's like what a plant does when it's done growing, it dies. And unfortunately, there's another phrase I've heard, like the person died at age 25, but wasn't buried until age 75 because they
Oh,
stopped
wow. Yeah.
working on themselves. They stopped growing
Yes.
as a person. And being human is all about interpreting what the meaning of an event has, even if it's a very tough event, which most of the time we grow through tough events on the other side of them. They're horrible to
Mhm.
go through when you're going through them, but then you become tougher. I have never personally become a better person because of ease and comfort. It's really all encompassing, but ultimately it's admitting that you can be affected by things, particularly in policing where there's a lot of stress, demands, and trauma exposure.
Absolutely. And one of the things I commonly talk about when I'm giving presentations is, and you know this, that as human beings, we're not wired to do what many first responders, military, we're not, our brains are not wired to handle those kinds of things. And I think you're talking about admitting that
Yep.
you're not wired for that. And what's the impact of the fact that you're not wired, but you're having to do this day in and day out?
You hit the nail on the head. And I pointed that out after I researched for my first book, Mental Health Fight of the Heroes in Blue. I was like, wait a minute, because I had learned that our brains were innately wired to look for the negative, all in an effort to protect us. If you're exposed to a lot of negativity, even within the four walls of a police department or a sheriff's office, and you don't do anything about it, there's a lot of thoughts and a lot of memories that can get attached to a lot of negative emotions. And those negative emotions can lead to a lot of bad actions, which can lead to a lot of results. And I'm speaking of that firsthand experience. But you'd have to wake
Yeah.
up and learn about it, you know?
And it spills over. And that's what was going on personally for you and why your wife wound up confronting you on that. And you had said there was some, I didn't know if there was anything else that you, sometimes alcohol or things like that, we numb those negative feelings. I didn't know if you had any stories with that too.
No, I would drink, but recreationally. Fortunately, never that. Now, the addiction I had the first 2 years of my career, that was a getaway. And I was shocked. And I tell
Mm,
people about it. It was a porn addiction. I was shocked. I was like, what in the world is a goody two shoes Catholic boy like me getting that addiction? That was awful. And I had to get professional assistance for it. But because I acknowledged I was human and I couldn't fix it on my own, I got the help I needed.
right.
But you said about the bleeding over. It definitely does. And I wasn't even present to my son during those time on K9. He was a baby, and I would, on my days off, I would go drop him off at daycare and come home and basically sit around on the couch because I had a day off, and this police officer needed to rest. And my wife was
Yeah.
like, "What are you doing? Go get him."
Go
I
get
mean,
your
she was
kid.
right. She was absolutely
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and I know you slid past the addiction aspect, but addiction's numbing, right?
Yeah,
All of it is numbing in some kind, and it doesn't matter. Addictions can be video games. It could be motorcycles. I'm gonna go and ride motorcycles all day long. It could be anything. Anything that's not done in a healthy way
yep.
can be addiction. But and then the fact that you're talking about that you chose to take care of yourself and ignore the relationships, and that's really a part of how it impacted you. How did embracing your humanness change all of that?
First of all, it was eating a slice of humble pie. Man, I really got to take a look in the mirror and be honest with myself. What is bothering me? But it also led to, I guess you could say, this tenacious feeling to
Mm,
never go back there again. And if I do, then I'm going to get in whatever emotional state I need to get in to get out of it.
yeah,
Because let's face it, if we're not at our best selves or not trying to work on, I'm not going to say try, not working on being the best versions of ourselves. I'm not saying you won't have a bad day, but if you're not continuously working on being a better version of yourself, then you can't be that better person for others. There's that analogy, the airplane, you put on your mask before you help someone else. That's common, but it's true,
yeah.
that kind of thing. But it was mainly a year after giving up Canine and still trying to find my identity. Like, who the heck am I? And I read a book, Millionaire Success Habits by Dean Graziosi, and I know other cops have been like, why the heck were you reading a book by a millionaire? Honestly, it was a YouTube ad that drew me to it. But I got to thinking after reading the book, I said, wow, I used to think all this stuff was complicated. I was like, we have the same brains that they do. They're human as well. But he started talking about your why. He started talking about you got to keep showing up. You got to do things you don't want to do to become the person you need to be. But you can't become that person you need to be if you don't start changing. I could go on.
You're talking about a core component about this, though. It's the idea that you said earlier in the podcast, I didn't like who I was becoming, or I became the person that I didn't want to be. And
Yep.
that's what you said in the book. What you started realizing is, wait a minute, I need to be directing this. And I think that's what many first responders, law enforcement, and even spouses don't recognize, is that they are continually getting off course based upon what they're experiencing and what they're going through. Because even my husband's retired now, but for 21 years, I was definitely impacted by it. I still see abuse, trauma, the gamut, right, in my own career. And I realize that I am more cynical now than I used to be, that it takes effort to look through things. And I'm not going to say rose-colored glasses or anything. I'm more of a realist. There is 8 ounces of water in that cup, but how I choose to interpret that cup and that 8 ounces is up to me. And that's what I think you're saying too, is the mindset wise of where am I going to go with this?
I might butcher it, but you just made me think of a quote by Napoleon Hill, who wrote the book Think and Grow Rich, where we don't see things as they are. We see things how we are, the meaning behind it. Yeah.
Very much.
This is the stuff I wish police officers were trained in the academy. This whole mindset thing, because policing will chew you up and spit you out. And they need more mindset building, which is why I'd go out as much as I can and speak across the country about this kind of stuff. So we have to shift the mentality 100%.
That goes perfectly into my next question. Way to go. But that's exactly what I was going to talk about, is that a lot of the mindset that we have, and that I had for a long while, my husband too, is that I'm tough, or I'm strong, I'm brave and strong and tough were all synonymous with this idea of not talking about things and not burdening each other with our struggles. And that's what we're still dealing with today. We're talking about it more, but it's still there, right? I'm not going to burden my spouse, whether it's an officer or married spouse or partner, right? That I'm not going to burden them with my struggles, or I'm going to shove that stuff down or pack it in a closet. That's all analogies that we hear. So we know that impacts emotional and relational health. We know that. Everybody knows that, I think. But what are some of the first steps that people can take, or officers can take, to move from that mindset into a more human-based mindset?
Be honest with yourself. We weren't meant to go through this world alone. There's people around you who care. I'm sure they wouldn't mind if you opened up. Bottom line. And since you know the end result, why are you going to wait until a moment of disaster and a personal crisis going on before you act? There's a saying I heard the other day: leaders anticipate, losers react. Don't be in the reactionary mode.
Whoa, wait, say that again. That was really important.
Leaders anticipate, losers react. And we're all about proactive policing. It was all about, hey, get your self-initiated stats up. Be self-initiating with yourself. Just be like, wait a minute, the last few days, I have really been pissed off at the world, and now I'm not sleeping well, or I've got ulcers in my stomach, I've got heartburn, whatever the case is. Be aware of how you're feeling. And even on calls, if you go to, it was always hard to see children being the victims of crime. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
As well as suicides, or heck, I even hated being in a fight with someone, hated it. At least say at the end of it, when your body's kind of calmed down a little bit, at least say, that bothered me. Just acknowledge it. All these things. Don't wait till there's something wrong to fix it, because it might be too late at that point. Maybe it's a marriage, maybe it's a health condition you get. I don't know. None of us are immune to this.
I love that. I love it. Now I'm left with the fact of, no, I want to say, yeah, don't be a loser.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to be losers.
I want to be a leader. And I think about the concept and idea of situational awareness. Situational awareness saves lives, right?
Yeah.
As an officer, you are naturally trained to have that situational awareness. But what you're talking about is applying that same concept to ourselves or to themselves, right? Where it's, hey, be aware of what's going on in your body, what's your mood, how are you reacting? Like you said, wow, I've been an asshole for the last couple of days and I'm not sleeping well. Maybe something's going on. Hello?
Exactly. And don't push it down with the alcohol or whatever other bad habit may come up, to which all of us have had them. It's something you have to continuously work on. We have to grow as people. And the good thing is when you grow, you won't stay in this survival mindset that so many police officers have. I got to get through another however many years, and then I'll be happy out of nowhere when I retire.
Yes, that is, and I hear that a lot. And I think that even as a couple going through that, when we don't have this, it's going to be so much better, quote unquote. And then it's no, you got to work on it the whole time, right? Why? And that's what I was thinking too, is why go through this really horrible time period for 20 years, 25 years? Why grind it out and be miserable when you can change your mindset and have a good life? Why wait the 20 years after retirement or 25 years after retirement?
100%. I think it's one of our biggest flawed ways of thinking. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, you did.
I think it's one of the biggest flaws in an overall mentality that we have in law enforcement, and it has to change. And I know some people probably think easy for you to say you're out of it. No, I went through several years of ups and downs of being emotionally and physically affected by the stress and demands and trauma on the job. But my last 4 years on the job, I decided to take action. Nothing changes until you take action. And that all stems from you being aware of how you are as a human being.
I think and I'm interested in your perception of this. I think as I'm going to say the younger generation is coming up and they're becoming officers, my experience is that there's more value on mental health. They've grown up with the idea that mental health is health. And I think they're working to change some of that for sure. But I know there's vulnerabilities that come with that mindset, right? So if I'm thinking I have that I'm going to embrace my humanness, what's some of the pushback that maybe other officers people that are thinking more human or admitting that they need to talk or wanting to talk? Because that's some of, I think, what prevents people from being open or talking with their spouse or talking with a friend or a peer support person.
Oh yeah, we definitely have to change the culture regarding that. If everyone's affected differently by different things on the job, suicides and obviously children, that bothered me. But yet when I went into a scene where there was blood and guts everywhere, I really wasn't that bothered by it. But yet other officers were puking, and everyone's different. We have to acknowledge that if someone was upset by what they went through, that at least they're acknowledging it. Come on, at least they're acknowledging. If they can't handle it, if they legitimately can't handle it, yeah, there might be a case and need for reevaluating if this is the career for them. But to be affected as a normal human being, there shouldn't be any judgment. The good thing is, I do believe we are making a good shift in momentum. It needs to pick up a lot, but I think the momentum is still forward on embracing wellness and mental health. So many police departments now are getting their wellness units going in this, but I think they're trying to tear down that wall that so many of us have set up in years prior. And it definitely needs to happen.
Yeah, for sure. I know that you have, I think it's a course called the 10 Code Mindset. Is there a course there? Tell everybody a little bit about the course and what it's about. That's exciting.
It's going to be online, available for anyone, but it is what I teach when I go out and speak in person. It's proving to you that you're human. And then it goes into the self-awareness, but it's more than, as I say in my book, you go to the doctor's office and you say, I'm sad. They're not going to hand you a bunch of antidepressants and say, good luck. They're going to ask you a series of questions. Are you bothered by this? Have you been losing sleep? All gaining the awareness of what is really going on. I list out signs and symptoms, not for you to memorize them as a list, but for you to say, oh, shoot, I've been feeling this way. And I know this works because I was speaking to a group not too long ago, and an officer in that group had to use deadly force or was involved in a deadly force incident. And that officer, when I flashed up the signs and symptoms of suicide risk, that officer told the superior, I'm feeling some of those. Didn't even
Wow.
notice it until I raised the awareness. We go into that, and then we go into action. Like, what are some solutions that you can do as a person in addition to the care, like professional assistance if you need it? But what are some things you can do that are not really talked about in America because they're just blown off as if they don't work? They're not instant fixes, stuff like that. But at the same time, not talking about them in a boring way and really inspiring police or anyone taking the course. Take action. No matter what you're going through, just take action. No matter how small, take action. It won't be easy, but it's worth it. Every single bit of it.
Yeah. Can you give us a sneak peek? What are one of those little things that we ignore that are easy to implement?
Stretching in the morning. When you walk out the door and you feel stiff, your mind's already thinking about the pain you're in physically. You could have just taken 10 to 15 minutes and stretched or done a power yoga work. Get those good body hormones pumping out. And you can walk out the door with a totally different perspective. You might not walk into roll call as pissed off as what you had you not done it. It's that kind of stuff. It's just things that we really don't take our time to do. Stay away from the news for 5 days. That's it. Just stay away from the news for 5 days. If
My
someone
gosh,
spot
yeah.
you, if something really bad is happening in your area that you need to know about, but if something's going on the other side of the country, crime-wise, you don't need to know about it. Honestly, it's not affecting you. Free your mind of this kind of stuff. And I said, this is something I have to work on every single day. I'm not perfect by any means, but we have to push each other and hold each other accountable, as well as put some inspiration into it. When you're not inspired,
Yeah.
you're not gonna act. You can't rely on motivation. It comes and goes. And that's another thing I point out in the course.
I talked about that in my very first podcast this year. We get really excited, but then our brain wanes off of that excitement.
yeah.
Motivation has to be habit. And I love that you're talking about little things that can change your mindset, adding more negativity to your mindset. That's perfect. And I think that's important for spouses too. And as a couple, right? It's easy to talk and complain about work or the job or the department, and instead finding something else that is uplifting. And once again, I'm not trying to do glitter on poop, rainbows coming out of the butthole or whatever. It's one of those things of be realistic about it and what can bring you joy, what can change the shift in the mindset. And that's what the 10 code mindset's about. You also have several books, and I did not list them all. Can you tell us about your books and what each one is roughly about?
Absolutely. The Mental Health Fight of the Heroes in Blue, that was the book I published in 2020, spring of 2020, after learning back in January of 2020 that more officers were dying by suicide. Now, here's the deal. A lot of people know that now. I was 12 years on the job, 12, 13 years on the job, didn't know that. I had no idea that more cops were dying by suicide, and that enraged me. I thought to myself, wait a minute. Why are they not telling us this stuff? And then I was all the mental health problems I've had, but I felt I was the only one going through it. Anyway,
Right? Yes.
so I wrote the book, Mental Health Fight. I said, I've got to do something. And I prayed, God, how can I help fellow officers? And he spoke directly to me. It's not a conversation, but it put the thought in my head. I opened up my heart to it.
Scott, I need you to write a book. Yeah.
I opened up my heart and eventually had the thought, write a book, to which I was, all right, let's do it. And the book is all about the humanness and then how you can mentally navigate the career. And a lot of it is based on my mistakes. I thought to myself, there's a lot more solutions out there than what we're being led to believe or what we already know. And I wrote 101 health tips for police officers, which obviously applies to anybody because it's health tips. We're probably going to beat a dead horse here. We're human. So the book's for pretty much anyone. It's geared more towards police. But that book was fun to write because I learned a lot while writing that book. And it's been pretty cool. There's been departments that have ordered that book in mass for their officers and they hand them out because it's not a long book. It's right to the point. But then I wrote Truths Beyond the Police Academy because I was looking back on my career and saying, I wish they would have told me this, or I wish they would have told me that.
Oh, I love that concept. Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote a few chapters about that. And then my latest book, 101 Useful Tips for Rookie Police Officers, that's pretty much giving the rookies advice because I miss being a training officer. So I'm passing on the knowledge that I gave to my rookies, in addition to the obvious mandatory obligations that you have of defending and upholding the Constitution, obeying your department policy. Yeah, okay. If I have to tell you to do that, I think you need to go do something else. But this is more of the several years working law enforcement perspectives.
Mentoring.
telling the rookies, hey, let's go about it this way. It includes some tactics. It includes self-care, but it includes communication skills, little specific techniques, stuff. It's really all encompassing. And the thing I like about that book is I got some of the biggest influencers, in my opinion, for the profession, some of the most notable leaders in the profession too, and a psychologist who really helps, Dr. Catherine Coleman. She's on national media.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
I've interviewed her. Yeah, she's been on podcast before. She's awesome.
absolutely. Yeah, she's featured in it. They give advice for the rookies, which was tremendous. I was so glad they did that. And that book was recently given out to every single one of the new recruits at the St. Louis County Police Department. And so they got the book, and it's
Wow.
that's just that brings me such honor to know that I'm not an actual FTO anymore, but in a way, I'm still training the new officers.
Yeah, that's very cool.
And
So
then I'll start working on the 5th book in due time.
I love that. I love that you're just like using your journey to write and to impact and to speak and just help so many other people. When you think, if there was a spouse out there that that noticed, is listening and noticing, hey, I think he might be talking about my officer husband or wife, one of the two. What's a good way to bring up, hey, I think you've lost your humanness to your partner?
What honestly, my wife got my attention when she said, I'm having these thoughts. But then I remember when I was home for a year after my second Iraq deployment, my dad approached my brother and me because we were over there at the same time. And he said, I'm losing you. I don't want to lose my family. And we didn't take it too well at first. We were like, no, we're fine. And he was like, no, really, I've got a doctor that you can speak to. I'm losing you and I don't want to lose my family. And I was like, oh, he's serious.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying
That
use that phrase exactly, but you need to make it very clear. I don't want to continue down this road because I love you. I care about you. I don't want to go down this road. And they'll probably, and what's our first instinct is to always be on the defense. Yeah. That's always the first thing, but it's worth working on. It really is. And it's worth
and really,
speaking up.
yeah, and that phrase could be used with anyone, really. It could be used with another officer, it could be used with a friend. The idea of, hey, I feel like I'm losing you. I've lost a part of you. I'm losing you and I care about you and I want you to think about this or I need you to come back. I love that way of confronting somebody because it's care and concern and simple.
Yeah. Simple. And then I would say also have a plan in place. Say,
Mm.
I know he was obviously not my spouse, but I'll never forget my dad saying, I have a doctor lined up that you can speak to and who can help you get past these flashbacks, anxiety attacks, and all this. So as a spouse, we can go see this person, or we can go on this retreat, or I can take the kids to my parents' house and we can have the day together, and we won't talk about work. We won't talk about the kids. We'll talk about us, whatever the case is. Like I've said before, action is where it's at. You have to take action.
Yeah. Once you say something to somebody, maybe have a backup, have an
Mhm.
action plan of some kind of what you can do and a suggestion. I think that's really important for officers too, because many times officers aren't going to be able to think in the moment of, I don't know what to do. And if you have something laid out, that can help. And it might be, hey, we need to go find a place to laugh. We need to go have fun somewhere. Let's go take a nature walk or whatever it is. Yeah. Not only letting people know that you've lost them or that they've lost some of their humanness, but having that next step lined up or helping them to line up that next step is really important. Big mindset shift. Being human can be difficult. I know but part of what you said is continually assessing, trying to check in with ourselves and to figure out, hey, is my behavior lining up with the person I want to be? And then what do I need to do about it? I still love that quote. It was leader or loser. That was my choices. That
Yeah,
quote.
leaders anticipate, losers react.
Stop being the loser and reacting and start anticipating. Start being the leader that you are, not only for yourself, but for your family to be able to have the life that you want. And all of that is tied up in humanness. Is that a good synopsis?
Oh, I would definitely say so. Absolutely.
Anything else you would add?
I would say if you're feeling like, no, I have lost, I am in a rut, I don't know how to get out of this, I am totally burned out, but I don't know how to keep going. Talk about this really big word in the course called neuroplasticity. You don't know even if you can't remember the word itself, remember our minds are like plastic. And when plastic is warm, when plastic is thin, it can be bent, it can be molded. Our brain is no different. It can be rewired, and you can actually start to work on you and start to think differently, which means you put different meanings to different events. And you could look at one event that totally kicked your butt mentally and then go through a process of neuroplasticity by taking care of yourself, and you look at that event totally different. And I'm telling you that as someone who's been there. I've gone through it, and I'm not looking back. Please do not stop. Do not give up. You have the ability to change. Everyone, Coach V said in that famous speech he gave when he was dying of cancer, everyone can change.
I love that. Thank you so much. Scott, if people want to get a hold of you or buy your books, or when the course is released, when is the course getting released, by the way?
I'm going to say March 1st. I'm losing track of the days.
How do they get a hold of you? How do they get a hold of the course? How do they get a hold of your books?
thescottmedlin.com. And when you go to my website, you can actually get a free downloadable quick guide on mental health. And it's nothing cheesy. It's just like a checklist. Have you done this? Are you feeling this? And you'll be able to read things, but in a very short time. And when you decide to take the next action step, there is a plan in place for you. But you can also contact me through that website where it says request Scott, but you can email me through there as well. And that's thescottmedlin.com.
All right. Scott, thank you so much. I'll put links to his books in the show notes, and as far as the website too, so you can get a hold of Scott, get a hold of that freebie that he has, maybe pick up one of his books that he mentioned, or even jump into the course. And if you're a spouse listening, keep in mind that it's also your mindset too, because we can become cynical, we can go to that dark side, we can have a lot of contempt and resentment, and we can have trauma, not only from childhood, but also from the career as well. Keep in mind that this is not just for officers, it is for both of you, and to make you a better and stronger couple. Until next time, guys, keep it Code 4. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. For more information about the podcast or Cyndi, check out code4couples.com. All intellectual property rights owned by CRLD2 Ventures, LLC, are protected by the firm of 9mm, 45 ACP, 5.56mm, and 12 gauge.